Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has promised it is going to happen. He just won't absolutely say when. The Israeli Defense Force have posted this footage of their targeted raid using tanks in the territory of the northern Gaza Strip, and they said the troops left the area at the end of the mission. So we keep our eyes very much firmly focused on the Middle East, but for right now we're going to take that focus back to Britain, because the Labour Party have suddenly found themselves basically a week after the by-elections where they won substantial wins in two areas, in Tamworth, in Mid-Beds as well. I mean, unbelievable wins, really, which would have suggested to most people that even if you didn't extrapolate it completely, they would certainly be forming the next government. But in the last couple of days, a couple of things have happened. Keir Starmer's now under massive pressure from inside of his own party to actually reveal what he thinks about Gaza, what he thinks about what Israel should do. And now, just this morning, we broke the news that Rachel Reeves, the Shadow Chancellor, is being accused of plagiarism in her new book, which is apparently called The Women Who Made Modern Economics, a real page-turner for Christmas, for the Christmas stocking, for the man in your life or the woman in your life or the non-binary gender-neutral person in your life, if you like. Apparently, reproduced material from online blogs, Wikipedia, The Guardian, and a report forward by Labour MP Hilary Benn has all been used without acknowledging the sources. Now, I'm going to ask Emma Woolfe, broadcaster and legendary TV presenter. Emma, a very good morning to you. Well, there's nothing worse than a plagiarist, in my view.
Well, no, but more accurately, I'm not legendary anything, but I'm a writer. I've written 12 books. I've had 10 books published. It's very... I'm wincing.
Yeah.
It's very easy to do that.
Right.
It's very easy to lift material, to use it. I mean, we've all done that in essays, but when you do it in a book, that is absolutely... I mean, you could say this is carelessness, that she didn't, reference the sources properly.
Right.
But when you have, and it's very easy to check now,
when
you have whole sentences that are literally lifted from a Wikipedia page, from somebody else's book, from other sources...
And this is
she needs to explain why.
And this is a story spotted by Financial Times reporters, right?
Yep.
And what they haven't done is they haven't used plagiarism detection software. They've actually checked it by hand. And they're talking about entire paragraphs rather than just sentences. She's refuting it. A spokesperson for Rachel Reeves says that the FT's accusations are not correct. However, that depends on... I mean, we haven't seen the evidence yet. I haven't seen the book.
No.
I really don't want to have to read it, to be honest.
I really don't.
It doesn't sound very stimulating.
I mean, who's the women who made modern economics? Are we going to start with Liz Truss there?
Well, very possibly so. I mean, presumably she doesn't make it.
Why does it need to be women?
Yeah, because
that's my beef with
Rachel Reeves, isn't it?
Yes, I know. Well, look, this is not a good look for a shadow chancellor, a chancellor in waiting at all.
But we were just saying, isn't it interesting that a week after this incredible victory and this incredible kind of wave of optimism from the Labour Party, they've now mired themselves in two kind of potential scandals. This one, which is just broken, but also the Keir Starmer situation, where he's got himself into a hell of a mess just by answering a question that he was asked on another radio station. And he said that he believed that Israel had the right to defend themselves, and also they had the right to withdraw water, electricity, food and fuel from the people of Gaza. And then he waited a week and said he didn't mean that. What's he doing?
He's got himself into a real mess the last few days. And actually, the problem is, this is a really difficult... This is the thing that we're all struggling with, is that you can entirely... And he's been clear. He did say Hamas were terrorists. In this interview, he said Hamas are terrorists. However... Many, many Muslim people feel that he is saying, basically, you are indifferent to the suffering of the Palestinian civilians, because he said, yes, they have a right to withdraw food and power and aid that is going in.
Yes.
He then does what Keir Starmer does, which is sort of flip-flop and not be exactly clear what he means, because he's trying to appease all sides.
And you can't do that.
But it's particularly difficult for the Labour Party because of their history, because of their more recent history with Jeremy Corbyn being friends with all sorts of questionable organisations. So Keir Starmer, this could be the undoing. Exactly as you were saying, a week is a long time in politics. A week ago, I was actually sat here with Kev in your chair. Saying, it's pretty much, the Conservative Party, the Labour Party have got it in the bag.
Yeah, is it
absolutely not, and anything could happen over the next 12 months.
People who are considered, I think, would say, and I've been saying it for a while, don't worry about what's being said now, don't worry about what's happening now. There are a couple of things that Rishi Sunak could do. I'm not sure setting up an AI safety institute is one of them, by the way. But there are some things
utterly random in the current context.
There are some things that he could do. But there are also a lot of things that can go wrong for Labour. Because there are an awful lot of Muslim MPs. They've had meetings with Keir Starmer. We're going to speak to one of them coming up very shortly. And also, there's a lot of councillors who have resigned.
And a lot of his vote depend on that. A lot of his voters depend on that. And a lot of people will turn away. It's Labour's to lose rather than Conservative.
Well, Kevin was telling me that he had a guy on his show yesterday, I think a councillor, a Muslim councillor who was Labour, who said if Starmer does not move on this, he will lose 5 million votes. Now, they're not asking for him to reconsider it. They're not asking for him to clarify. They're asking for him to move, which means they want him to call for a ceasefire. And a ceasefire, on anybody's grounds at the moment, would be appeasing Hamas.
Exactly. And Labour are in an almost impossible position. If you look at their voter base, if you look at their peers and their MPs, if you look at their, their clear, the targets that they're going for, it's a really, really difficult situation. And the thing is, 90% of the people are not thinking about the general election now. It's what happens over the next 12 months, exactly as you say.
Yeah.
It's what...
I mean, I feel as though with all the things that are going on in London at the moment and around the world, and everybody's eyes, of course, are on Israel and Gaza, but also on their own communities, because people are being affected by this in every place. I mean, I see some terrible stories coming from America. I saw a projected sort of signal of support for Hamas on one of the universities in America, which I don't think would happen here. But when you see the numbers of people marching in London and the fear that's going through the Jewish community in Britain in general, there's a lot to worry about.
And last week we heard about this former Hamas leader, living quietly.
Living in Colindale.
Living in Barnet, the most Jewish area of London, of the whole of the UK. Yeah. Then you hear about, I was cycling through Mile End, Bethnal Green this morning. There are Palestinian flags everywhere. There are, there are posters up on all the... It's a really, really, it's very, very local, you're right.
It's a strange
And look, the ground incursion, the ground invasion has not even happened.
No.
I think we all assumed it was going to be sort of Monday, Tuesday. It hasn't happened yet. Things are only going to get more
at the moment,
and more tense and febrile and inflamed.
Exactly. I mean, at the moment we think that the reason it hasn't quite happened is that the US is still kind of convincing Netanyahu not to do it yet.
Yeah.
Because I think also, apart from anything else, I think the Americans want to have some protection in place, not just for Israel, but also for their own forces, in case it all kicks off. Also, we've seen that there was some action overnight. Northern Gaza was, it looks like, sort of at least patrolled by a column of tanks that went in from Israel. They say they've now come back out again. But again, as you say, if there does happen to be a ground incursion, and it does happen, that puts even more pressure on Keir Starmer to pick a side, because unfortunately it's quite difficult at the moment not to pick a side.
Yeah, and look, who knows what happens then? You then have fighting within this tiny, tiny area, this tiny, densely populated city. It's going to be hell on earth, isn't it? And what are we going to do about aid? How are people going to get food and power in? What's going to happen?
Exactly right. And I mean, you have to say, despite what the Arab world talks about and how they're all against Israel, they're not really in the mood to help out Palestine. Egypt have said we don't want any Palestinian refugees. Jordan have said the same. Imagine if we went, we don't want any Palestinian refugees. We'd all be accused of being the most racist country in the world, and people would be marching up and down Oxford Street, waving flags and saying how disgusting. Well, why aren't they demonstrating outside the Egyptian embassy and saying why don't you take some refugees?
Talk
about double standard.
It is double standards, and it's a very, very emotional issue.
It is. Let's move on.
I don't know where Starmer goes with this one. Actually,
I think he's in a bad place. I think he's literally got no good place to go from it, because no matter what he does, he's going to, he's going to upset
one side or the other.
Stephen Pollard, who's the editor of the Jewish Chronicle, says this: test for Starmer that will show us just what kind of prime minister he will be. And that's kind of true.
And I think you're right. And I think Stephen Pollard's right. I think this is a moment when he just has to make a bold decision and stick with it and be clear and be eloquent and try. I mean, look, none of us can explain exactly how we feel when it's so complicated, because everybody's heart is bleeding for any innocent civilians, as well as feeling that Hamas, it was absolute terrorism and an atrocity. But I think Keir Starmer needs to show us how, as you say, how he'll act in that.
Bit of leadership. A bit
of leadership, exactly. And try and unite that divided party and those divided voters.
Exactly right. Let's talk about Jamie Bulger's killer, Jon Venables. I know that's a subject that you as a mother and any parent would want to talk about. I find it incredible that the Parole Board are even considering letting him out. This is a guy who committed one of the most heinous crimes in the history of this country. When he was himself a child, he's been allowed out twice before, and recalled twice.
Committed really nasty looking at child abuse online images again. And has been recalled and is now being considered again for parole. And guess what? He doesn't want to be in public because there's lots of private stuff and sensitive information. So he's going to have his hearing in private.
And the Parole Board have agreed to it on the basis that he deserves privacy.
He deserves privacy. So the dignity, the respect, the kind of respect for human life that he showed nobody, and that his victim. I mean, you can't.
It's incredible.
what one feels
Also, the
completely
Times, which is in this very building here, was one of the applicants to have it held in, at least not in public, but before reporters, so that reporters could actually report on the event. You know, they're perfectly capable of covering an event without releasing any details of an individual's, you know,
And
private
also,
life. There are rules in place for that kind of thing. You don't have to ban newspapers.
Also,
I'm
Mike,
never
he's
in
been
favour of
given anonymity and a new identity for the last 20 years. What
right.
his family have gone through for the last 20 years. I remember this happening, and I was a child at the time, and this little boy was 2 years old. I now have a 3-year-old, and just thinking about what Denise and the whole family have gone through, and now seeing this man being given, and I don't think he will, you know, it's probably unlikely that he will,
Well, you say that.
Who knows?
But, you know, they have let people out who have never been in any way capable of reforming themselves and going back into society. We look at Colin Pitchfork, the guy who was done for the double murder and rape of 2 15-year-old girls on 2 separate occasions, was allowed out. Within literally a couple of weeks of him being allowed out, he was found hanging around a girls' school. And you just go, what sort of idiots are the Parole Board? What sort of things go through their mind that they think these kinds of killers can be rehabilitated?
Why are their resources going towards people like this? But also, why is the prison system so broken that all you do is put a 10-year-old in prison and he comes out, or he's you know, 10 years later, he's committing all sorts of awful crimes online?
Also, if the issue is...
If there's no rehabilitation, then you might as well just lock them up and throw away the key.
And also, if the issue is that, you know, it's a danger to him if he's released and people know who he is, then surely the answer is don't release him.
Do you think he is still, or is he not, a risk to children online? Of course this man is.
Of course he is. I mean, he's proven it. He's been out twice and he's done it twice.
He's been given a chance and another chance.
An insanity clause would let you think that the third time you let him out, he won't do it.
And he was denied parole in 2020, so why is he being reheard again in 2023?
Because the system says, this is what drives me insane about the justice system, there are people in it who think, oh, well, he must get parole, he must at least be heard for parole, because that's why...
What, every 3 years?
Yeah.
Ofsted reports on schools don't happen sort of every, you know, they happen every 10 or 15 years.
Right.
And we're reviewing this prisoner.
Right.
Who deserves absolutely
Because I'm
no
afraid
time or
people will
resources
hate me
from
for
the
saying
justice
this,
system.
But we are once again overtaken by the wokists in our society who sit there like the Howard League for Penal Reform. You get these people on, they don't think anyone should go to prison at all because they think, oh, well, you know, the reason that they killed that person and butchered them and slit their throat and stabbed them 85 times is because they had a difficult upbringing. Sorry, I'm not buying it. Lots of people have difficult upbringings. They don't kill people as a result.
They don't.
You know, it's time they changed the system. Just time they changed the way that this parole board system works. It's too anonymous.
Do they genuinely feel that Jon Venables is going to come out and be a sort of useful member of our society? Is that the idea?
Well, they think that everybody deserves another chance. Well, guess what? He's had 2 more chances and he's screwed up both of them. So I just don't think that there is any point in cultivating any sense that he should be returned to society. I mean, apart from anything else, it would cost us even more money, probably.
Because he'll have full-time security.
He'd have either full-time security
monitoring.
Or he would have to be relocated to another place. He would have... And that never works in the end because people have such a visceral hatred of this man, quite rightly, for what he did, that I just think it's impossible for him to be able to live a normal life. I just don't see how he could. He can't get a job, you know, unless they completely, you know, cook up an entire fake history for the guy, because what are you going to do? Employ a guy who's got a name that you can't check?
But also online, people are always talking about who lives in the local area, who he really is, and all of that stuff. So that's, I think it's...
Another one for the old justice system, the appeal court currently hearing the case of Shamima Begum, who apparently is going to try every means possible to say that now that she's 24, she can't any longer be a citizen of Bangladesh, so she now is completely stateless, so therefore must be allowed to come back here.
But this is a more difficult one, and I usually feel pretty strongly, you know, one side or the other. This is a more difficult one. I don't know that a 15-year-old schoolgirl going out... I feel as though she was probably exploited and groomed. I feel like she did a really blooming stupid thing at 15. I think, you know, I don't have much sympathy for her.
But she then did a lot of things which were not blooming stupid, which were actually murderous and death cult related. I know. And she's a very canny operator. I think she knows exactly what she's doing. I don't think she's this innocent little girl. I feel less clear on this. I wonder whether at 15 it is an adventure. You do go off and become a bride of, you know, these insane ISIS fighters. It was a ludicrous thing to do. She's only 24, though. Yeah. The only reason I would say that there is a question mark over the decision is that they have allowed a lot of other people back. You know, I think there's been about 220 or so other people who went to fight for ISIS or went and joined the fight for
ISIS. And frankly, when they're handing out British passports, British citizenship to that Hamas ex-leader who's living in Barnet in a council house that he's been given a whopping great discount on, you know, really the bar for citizenship is not particularly high. She was a British citizen until the age of 15, until she made this appalling mistake. But I just think it's slightly inconsistent.
I mean, I don't know what she's waiting for. I think the best thing for her to do is just to get on a coach, get herself to Calais, get herself on a dinghy, and then nobody knows she's even here.
It's not
you know, I know it's not funny, but I mean, I'm afraid that's the way
that's
we are.
the way to do it.
That's how life is now. You know, I don't know why she's bothering going through the legal process. Just get on a dinghy, and nobody will know you're even here.
Might have a room on the big
My advice
home for her.
No, don't take my advice seriously, obviously, because that would be wrong. Emma, good to see you. Thank you very much indeed.
Thanks,
Emma Woolfe there.